Let's get the show on the road, shall we? When was the first protest that you got yourself involved with? And
Um,
how'd you learn about it?
well, like I saw a protest on, and you're in Union Square, and I asked one of my friend, this one dude who be going, who's involved with the PSL, and
Mm,
I was like, hey, are you going to are you going to this protest? And he's like, I'm actually in Colorado, but honestly, I wouldn't recommend that protest because it's ran by all the nonprofits. So he's like,
mm-hmm.
yeah, if you want to go to a protest, go to this one. And it was like Barclay Center. That was like my first protest. I was the one at Barclay Center, like
Yeah.
what was like 2 weeks ago.
So, um, that was essentially your reaction to the Floyd video and stuff like that, was to get involved in some way.
Yeah, I was
Something,
like,
yeah.
all right, at this point, it's enough. Like, I'm tired
Yeah.
of seeing shit like that.
So, as it pertains to the protest that you were at and that photo from that was actually featured at the New York Times, how'd you get yourself into that situation? Like, what was happening up
What
until
was
that point?
happening was we were out there peacefully demonstrating, and I think the cops. I mean, a lot of people were angry. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of us were fucking angry, especially with the NYPD. And cops started pepper spraying us, and I got pepper sprayed like 3 times. And like later on, like how we got to there is like I'm trying to cross the street. Like I'm over here trying to cross the street, and then out of nowhere, I just felt cops coming after me. Like they're trying to like throw me to the ground and stuff. And I'm like, the only reason, because I was like the first time I ever tried to run away from cops is because like they haven't given me an explanation to what they were doing. And I'm like, all right, if they're not gonna tell me, they're just gonna come at me violently. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna try to get away because I don't know what the fuck.
Instinctually, you would want to like go away, like run away from people like chasing after you in a very
Yeah,
aggressive
exactly.
kind of
They
way.
didn't even. Yeah, and I know they were cops, but they didn't tell me what they were doing, like what I did wrong. I
Hmm.
was just trying to cross the street.
So, you just got shoved to the ground, or were you also like pepper sprayed or anything like that, or?
Well, like by that time, like I was able to see because like people came to treat me.
Hmm.
So like I was treated, but like my face was still stinging from the pepper spray.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, no, and well, the only thing about like that whole thing that happened is like what was good is fortunately they didn't find those cops in the video, so they couldn't charge me. They couldn't take me to 1 PP,
Hmm.
one police plaza. So I was fortunate for them to let me out the bus, but like those flex cuffs literally cut off blood circulation to my hand, where my hand turned purple. Like my hand was changing color, and there was like no blood flow in my hand.
So
But yeah,
so essentially what you're saying is they apprehended you and then they put you in a vehicle,
MTA
an
bus, yes.
MTA
I was
bus,
apprehended.
but then they let you go afterwards.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they let me go.
All
They just
right.
took a picture of my license, but they let me go because they couldn't find they couldn't hold me on anything. They didn't find the officers in the video.
Um, there's actually a question about ACAB that I have here. Are you a proponent of ACAB, or the idea that all cops are bastards or whatever?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Actually, I do because and like I ain't gonna lie, I've been pulled over by cool cops, but you know, like what I'm trying to say is, a lot of these good cops, like they just turn the other way. Like they're not willing to call out they're not willing to call out their coworkers. Like if I was a cop and I witnessed something that I know is not right, I'm willing to call them out. And if I lose my job, even if I lose my job, but like I'm not gonna just stay silent or watch all this corruption happen. Because I had a coworker who told me her father was a cop,
Hmm.
and then he's a retired cop, and she told me like, oh yeah, he witnessed so much corruption in the police force.
Hmm. Yeah. So you feel like the sentiment is that even though not all cops as a whole are
Not all cops as a whole, but it's the institution. It's what much we're saying. It's the whole police institution. The earliest form of the police force was called slave patrol. So, like the whole police, is rooted in white supremacy and racism.
It seems there are certain conservatives or other kind of establishment folk who aren't so thrilled about a lot of the rioting and the looting going on and stuff like that. What do you think about those incidents?
Well, I mean, like they gotta understand, like unlike cops, because you don't see cops calling out their own, these supposed good cops calling out the bad cops. I mean, when I've gone to these protests, I've seen people, like all the peaceful protesters are actually doing everything they can to stop the rioting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like most of the people don't even want the rioting. It's just like it's just a few people, and then some people aren't even there for like the actual protest or for the cause. This is their opportunity just to smash a window or to loot.
Yeah,
because a lot of people aren't even they don't even care it's just their opportunity just to steal and shit.
mm-hmm.
But it's like, if you're gonna go to a protest, at least go for like the cause. And I even tell people, like, if you're there just because you're bored or use that as an excuse to get out of the house, it's like, we don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unless you're actually down with the cause, like, you shouldn't even go.
Mm-hmm. So you don't exactly excuse like any of the looters or the protesting and stuff like that?
I mean, a lot of them,
I mean, not protesting, but like violent acts that are happening.
I mean, I know a lot of them are actually there for the cause. Like, a lot of them deal with it a certain way. Because I'm not saying all the like rioters and looters are there. Like, I'm not saying they're all there for the same reason. It's just there's just some of them that are opportunists. Like, they'll drive to a spot, loot, and then drive away. But then you got those that are actually there because they're angry and they just feel like, okay, we've done all these peaceful protests, nothing's happening. They was like, okay, if we do violent protests, maybe we might see a change. I completely understand. Like, I get it. Like, I don't blame them for wanting to destroy shit. Like, I completely understand.
Whether or not the looting and kind of some of the rioting is justified, do you think that, do you have any worries about how the White House and how the government is responding to these protests in general?
I mean, well, I'm just happy because I'm happy in New York. At least we're getting more peaceful. But that's the thing. Like, I completely understand the rioting and shit. But if they keep doing this, like, they're gonna call they're gonna get the military involved, and I just feel like that's gonna even be worse. That's gonna worse the situation than better it.
As it pertains to the issue at hand, systemic racism, kind of a topic that's connected to that is this concept of white privilege. Do you believe it exists? And
absolutely, I believe it exists.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it. I mean, I've walked into stores with my friends. One of my best friends is like he's Afro Dominican, and I see how he gets looked at versus how I get looked at. Like, I brought him to we went to one of my old jobs, like before an incident happened where I was like, yo, like, we went there to go pick up my paycheck, and one of the a customer, like, he went to go order food, and we had to go sit down at a table, and a lady at another table was just looking at him as if, like, he didn't belong there. So
a lot of people would agree that certain people or like minority groups get looked at or treated differently, like in the private life and businesses and stuff like that, but they would want more of an explanation of how that affects like the criminal justice system or how that affects policing. Do you know anything about that from what you've like looked into?
yeah, because like the way how the minority community was looked upon is because it's looked upon as if, like, oh, they're poor or they can't amount to nothing, and which is actually bullcrap, because I've read articles of people from the inner cities actually going to really good colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And like I know, like, it's just what it is like there's like the funding is like they don't have enough funding because of the red line laws.
Who doesn't have enough funding?
Like the black community, the minority community, like they don't have enough
Mm-hmm.
funding. Like, and also because of the redlining laws that happened during the Jim Crow era.
So, within your local area of kind of where you live, you don't have to like give it out, but are you aware of any issues that kind of minorities in your area kind of like
Well, I mean,
deal with?
I actually live I live in a white community, but the town next to me is Paterson, New Jersey, and
Mm-hmm.
they've had the FBI investigate their police department because their police department, there's been videos of them like doing corrupt shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
Paterson, yeah, it's pretty much like what's going on with other inner cities is pretty much the same thing going on in Paterson.
So, what are some reforms in terms of policy that you would advocate for? Like things progressive such as Ilhan Omar or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could write up for Congress or for local politicians to vote for
Oh yeah, well
directly.
definitely cut police funding and give it back to like social programs
Mm-hmm.
like housing, and like we definitely need more housing for like the minority community because like we need more affordable housing because
Mm-hmm.
like the thing is like a lot of the programs that they claim that we just have no funding for, but you have funding for the police department, which has been antagonizing and terrorizing their citizens. So, I feel like we would have more if we just cut funding or defund the police,
Mm-hmm.
because we would have more money towards these social programs.
Do you feel like there should be more of a push towards balancing the budget rather than cutting funding? Because some of the reforms that people are asking for, such as like body cams, those are going to require a lot more infrastructure and a bit more funding. So maybe more funding for both things, or like just, again, a balancing of the budget somehow,
I
not
mean,
necessarily a straight defunding of like
maybe. I
police.
mean, hopefully, like, because I don't believe we're gonna be able to like cut like abolish the police for a while. So if we're gonna at least cut funding on police, like maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, like allow more body cams, but like maybe cut like their batons. A lot of the weapons, a lot of the riot gear, like they don't really need, and a lot of like their high powered guns. And I'm actually all for. I'm pro like gun, but like I think the police um they go a little trigger happy with it. And I also believe that like if you were to be a cop, you would need to go to school for if you go look at Norway, like you gotta be 3 years in the academy. You gotta try to master in criminal defense and shit. Uh Criminal something. But like and you in America, it's like it's just too easy to be a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, and also like, if you want to be a lawyer, you gotta go to school for like 8 to 10 years. A doctor's like 12 years, and it's like to be a cop, it's like 21 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And we also need mental evaluation.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about the police going, earlier you made the statement kind of like the police go crazy with guns and stuff. Do you mean that they're too militarized, or they take
Yeah,
pretty
they are too
radical?
militarized, and they just see like they're quick to see things as a threat, which leads to tragedies. They're just way too quick. Oh, they're gonna think, oh, this black guy looks like he looks like he's up to no good.
A lot of the reasons why there's these protesters out now and there's all these demonstrations is that people are fed up with how public servants are taking a long time to get these reforms done and stuff
Oh,
like that.
absolutely.
So do you think anything substantive, do you think change will come out of these protests now that there's such a
I
big
mean, I'm
like threat
starting
on
to
it?
see it. I mean, we are starting to see a little bit, but it's still not enough. But it's just like in Buffalo, like those cops were like, if that was not recorded, they would not have we're gonna get arrested. And like, police need to be held accountable like any other citizen. Like, they shouldn't just get a pass because they're wearing a uniform and have a badge.
What do you think are some ways that people who are unable to engage in the protests can help push for a more fair society in your eyes?
I feel like everybody should get together and go to their politician's office and demand that, hey, we noticed this, we know this was going on in our police department. We want you to push for reform so they can be more held accountable. And if they refuse to do that, then best thing to do is vote them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was about to actually mention that a lot of mainstream voices and even a lot of the protesters are calling for change through like electoralism, change through voting for people who will actually, focus on these issues, like
Yeah,
specifically within their campaigns. Do you think that's going to be a helpful thing in the short term, at least?
I mean, I would hope so. I really do. I mean, I think it could be, but if they just take advantage of our votes and not do what we ask them to do, then there could be like people could take it upon themselves and just throw them out. Like,
What are some tips that you would give to people uninformed about this topic? What kind of things would you ask them to do in terms of helping them get more informed about
I would
these
ask them to
issues?
donate. I would ask them to donate, contribute a little, or at least go out there, actually learn about what people go through, look into it, actually look into the problem look into the root of the problem of why we're advocating for it. Like, look, actually do the research and stuff. So that's the idea I would give them.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people kind of look into the research, but what about listening to voices of marginalized kind of groups or marginalized individuals? What would you say
Yeah,
about?
absolutely. That's what I was saying. When I was over there, just listen to what people listen to people's experiences, listen to how they feel, listen to why they feel that way, and then you would understand. Not everybody is gonna be, not everybody is treated equally.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to think differently, and then when I hung out with friends who are minorities, they would explain to me what life is like and how they feel since how they were treated because of their skin color. So that kind of also changed my views.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a pretty good interview. Thanks for taking the time
Yeah,
to talk to me and stuff like that about
thanks
your
thanks for having me
perspective.
on.
Yeah.